Walter Peck, a staff member at Edmonton's Mackay School Museum, was working late, preparing a room for an important meeting the next morning. Satisfied with his work, Peck locked up the meeting room and began to leave. As he walked down the hall, he heard the sounds of children echoing through the empty building. The sounds grew louder and closer until it seemed to surround him. Frightened, Peck ran from the building. Outside, Peck felt a bit embarrassed, knowing there had to be a rational explanation for what he had just experienced. Peck glanced back at the building. Standing at the window of the meeting room was a man, staring down at him. Convinced it was a burglar, he raced back into the building. He found the only door into the meeting room was still locked. Yet somehow, his carefully set up room had been reduced to a shambles. He turned and found himself face to face with the figure he had seen in the window. The man stared at him coldly, then silently turned and left. Peck ran into the hallway, but the figure had disappeared, and he was alone once again. Now, genuinely unnerved, he locked up and quickly left the building. This would not be Walter Peck's last encounter with the mysterious gentleman.
Edmonton, Alberta's Maai Avenue School Museum chronicles the long history of both the city and the building. But this is a museum where the past literally comes to life. The staff and visitors report an astonishing array of unexplained activity. None doubt that they share these halls with the spirits of long ago.
The Maai Avenue School building has been many different things. It was once the site of Alberta's first legislature, and now houses a museum and provincial archives. But its time as a school may have left the greatest imprint on the building, as voices from that era still echo through its empty classrooms.
The Mackay School goes back to the early 1900s, and I believe that the history that is in this building has led to many of its current hauntings. The kids that went to the school and some of the workers who worked on its original construction, and some of them who died, obviously are remaining behind at the school, probably just to make sure that their school stays intact.
Longtime staff member Lisa Traeger, working late one night, had a mysterious encounter with one of the building's former students. She saw a child wearing an old-fashioned school uniform staring at her. The boy ran off. Traeger was convinced the boy had somehow wandered into the building, so she followed him. The boy glared at her, angry at the intrusion. Her efforts to catch the boy proved futile, as if he could predict her every move. Giving up, she returned to her work, only to find the mysterious boy standing at her desk. Her search turned into an eerie game of hide and seek, but the boy almost seemed to disappear and reappear at will. Finally, the boy vanished before her very eyes. Shaken, she returned to her desk, only to discover her computer and paperwork strewn around the room. It looked as if a tornado had struck, or an angry child. Other members of the staff have investigated the phenomena and discovered clues to at least one spirit's identity.
I've been here since October 1984, and the building I work in is haunted because a lot of people have had different and unexplained experiences, including myself. Well, there's been many nights with the Ouija board, and the very first time with the Ouija board, I made contact with a fella, and he identified himself as Peter. He was supposedly a laborer who fell off the roof during the 1912 edition. Peter identified himself as dying on January 3rd, 1912, and I was born on January 3rd, 1951. And our schoolhouse opened on January 3rd. I feel maybe that's why there's a connection between Peter and myself. A lot of other fellow workers have experienced some sort of thing happening here that was strange.
The strange events generally occur at night, when employees are alone. The building's boiler inexplicably failed one evening, and as the lone staff member, Walter Peck felt duty-bound to investigate. His search led him to a second encounter with Peter. Peck has since moved on to a new position and declined to be interviewed about his experiences. After hours in the Mackay School is when another employee experienced unexplainable events. First, she heard the sounds of children. The door suddenly slammed shut. No matter how hard she tried, the door would not move. But the moment she released it, the door opened by itself. As she made her way out of the building, the sounds of children surrounded her. At the window stood the ever-present spirit known as Peter, the eternal night watchman of the Mackay School. Some theorize that Peter is a guardian, protecting the young spirits that inhabit the building. We may never know why these entities have chosen to stay on after death, but one thing is clear. As long as this historic building stands, its hallways will never be truly empty. Hotel Fort Garry has been Winnipeg's grand hotel of distinction since 1913. Unique to this hotel, however, are two long-dead guests who have yet to leave. After a long day on the road, Robert Wagner, a hotel guest, climbed into bed, anticipating a good night's sleep. Adjusting his position in bed, he turned and felt someone lying in the bed next to him. Panic gripped him as he opened his eyes, only to see a woman in bed with him. As he looked in the direction of the woman, she gently blew him a kiss and vanished.
The Hotel Fort Garry in Winnipeg, Manitoba is a luxurious hotel built for prestigious travelers. It took an enormous effort by many people and a staggering amount of materials to complete construction on time. It is during construction that our mystery begins.
In 1911, 2 years before the opening of the hotel, some final installation procedures were being made to the elevator. Rutherford, the hotel's maintenance man, was called to work on the problem. But while he was in the elevator, it malfunctioned, losing its counterbalance and careening to the ground, killing Mr. Rutherford instantly. It is suspected that the unfortunate Rutherford is just one of the many spirits which haunt Hotel Fort Garry. Betty Cooper, a kitchen staff member, was laying out utensils and prepping the dining room for its next guests, when suddenly she felt a presence in the room, as though she were not alone. From the corner of her eye, Betty saw something move. Upon investigation, she found nothing out of the ordinary, but was still unable to relieve herself of the feeling of being watched. Another tale tells us of a love story gone horribly wrong. Mary and her young lover John had eloped. Secretly, they thought. They hid themselves away at Hotel Fort Garry for a honeymoon. It was in room 202 their marriage and their fate would be sealed. Disapproving of both the marriage and John, Mary's father discovered their whereabouts and stormed into the room, dragging the hapless husband away from his daughter. His anger spiraling out of control, Mary's father beat her husband to death. Distraught with the knowledge of John's fate, despairing at the thought of the rest of her life without him, Mary took her own life. And it seems, Mary never left the hotel again, becoming yet another of its permanent spirit residents.
Hi, my name is Kate, and I've been working here at the Hotel Fort Garry for 3 years. One day, I went to go clean room 202. As I was doing so, out of the corner of my eye, I saw one thing out of my cart start flying. As I looked over, more items levitated off my cart. I was so scared that I ran out of the room.
My name is Diane. I was staying at the Hotel Fort Garry here in Winnipeg. And one night I was staying in one of the rooms and I was sleeping. I was woke by a feeling like I was being nudged in the bed. And I actually fell out of bed. And when I got up, I came face to face with what I really feel was a ghost. And I do think that the Hotel Fort Garry is haunted.
Winnipeg's Hotel Fort Garry, where some stay the night and others stay an eternity. As we're about to discover, this quaint little inn, tucked away in Ontario's cottage country, attracts more than just weary travelers. A businessman came to this inn for a weekend getaway from the city. He was exhausted and needed a break from his usual drudgery. But the break he got turned out to be far from what he had imagined. Our unsuspecting guest is about to experience more than just cottage hospitality. The visitor felt as if he was being followed. In fact, he was, by the spirit of Judge William C. Mahaffey, the inn's original owner and, it seems, still ghostly occupant. When the traveler reached his room, he could not shake the unsettling feeling that came over him. Then, as he opened the door to his room, he discovered why. He came face to face with the judge. And then, as the ghostly apparition approached him, it simply vanished. The astonished traveler looked for the judge, but finding nothing, dismissed it as fatigue. But for this guest, it wasn't over. As yet another spirit, this time that of a woman many believed to be Mrs. Jackie Niven, a former owner, who after suffering from cancer, passed away in the home. The man awoke from his sleep, startled to find this ghostly woman in white staring at him. This time, there was no denying it. In one night, our tired vacationer had two distinct ghostly encounters.
The Inn at the Falls is right in the midst of cottage country in Bracebridge, Ontario. Throughout its existence, the inn has seen many changes. Changes resulting from death, fires, economic turmoil, renovation, and restoration. Surviving all of this, the building remains steadfast and dignified and haunted.
I started here at the inn in 1983, and I was here to the year 2000. You're at Inn of the Falls, and it's in lovely Bracebridge, Ontario. This place had a mind of its own, and that it would only keep who it wanted, and that if it didn't feel that you were welcome here, that you would not stay. And the people that I started with there was a lot of activity at that time when they were here. They, like ashtrays would fly off the counters, clothes would fall off hangers, fly across the room. Some people say, including myself, that Inn at the Falls in Bracebridge is a haunted house. And it truly is.
Another former owner, pregnant, climbed carefully down the stairs when she lost her grip. She and her unborn child tumbled to their deaths. Late one evening, a guest at the inn was awakened from a deep sleep by footsteps. As she listened closely, she could hear a woman crying. When the sound stopped, she returned to bed. Still disturbed by what she heard and unable to sleep, the guest went down to the front desk to tell them what she had heard. She asked the staff person if someone was having difficulty on her floor. Astonished with the guest question, the clerk responded by telling her that she was alone on the floor. Puzzling over the guest's story, the employee then had her own encounter with this inn's previous owner. Inn at the Falls in Bracebridge, Ontario, is a great place to stay. Where else can you expect cozy rooms, excellent service, and a variety of ghostly encounters? Hatley Castle, at Royal Roads University, was once the magnificent residence of the incredibly wealthy James Dunsmuir, who seems to live on there long after his death. Laura Johnston, a visitor to the castle, found this out firsthand. Entering the castle, Laura had the distinct feeling that she was not alone. With an eerie feeling of being watched, she glanced up behind her, where she saw a dark, shadowy figure on the landing, who seemed to be staring directly at her. Slowly, she made her way to the top of the stairs, but saw no one there at first. Suddenly, an older gentleman startled and frightened Laura as he approached her. Laura Johnston certainly was not the first to see James Dunsmuir long after he had died, and she wouldn't be the last, as his spirit seems bound to the hallways and rooms of this, his former mansion, for all eternity.
Victoria's Hatley Castle in British Columbia was built for James Dunsmuir, a former premier and lieutenant governor of British Columbia. The castle was home for the family until the 1930s. Today, it is home to a family of spirits.
Some of the other ghostly sightings around the castle seem to have something to do with the time when this building was used as a military college.
Hi, we're here at Hatley Park, and behind me is Hatley Castle, located in Victoria, British Columbia, in the community of Colwood in Souk. The estate was built by James and Laura Dunsmuir in 1908, between 1908 and 1910, and the house was originally intended to be a retirement home for James, who had just stepped down as Lieutenant Governor of British Columbia. The government turned it over to the Department of National Defense, and they ran a military college here from 1940 until 1995, and then in 1995 they opened up Royal Roads University, which is what's here now. With the family's sordid past, it's no wonder that people consider Hatley Castle to be haunted, and there actually have been several sightings of ghosts inside the house.
Cramming for exams can be a pastime for some students, and so it was for Barry Short, first-year cadet who was up late one evening, getting in as much work as he could for an upcoming exam. Staying up too late, he fell asleep at his work. A tapping on his shoulder awoke him. Looking around, he saw no one, and, thinking he must have been dreaming, drifted back to sleep. Again, Cadet Short was awakened, this time by a push. He looked up and saw a woman staring directly at him. As he watched her for what seemed like just a moment, she walked away and simply vanished. The young cadet tried to get a grip on himself. Was he dreaming? Or was he just visited by a ghost? Perhaps the ghost of Laura Dunsmuir.
They took the description that he gave and went to visit Dola, who was living on the property at the time, and they described the woman to her, and she said that it was the spitting image of Laura, her mother. Now, as with any historic building, there's always ghost stories attached to it, and some of the more famous ones involve James Jr., who was one of only 2 sons James and Laura had.
James Jr. decided to join the military to serve his queen and country. On the day of his departure, James prepared himself, adjusting his uniform so that he looked perfect. He joined his sister Dola and his parents in the Japanese garden for one last goodbye. As they embraced, James Jr. received some final advice from his father. He knew how much his family loved him and kept him home safe and soon. It was a sad yet proud moment for the Dunsmuir family as they watched their beloved James head off to serve his country, like his father and grandfather. This proud moment would turn into tragedy, haunting the Dunsmuirs throughout the remainder of their lives and beyond. A German U-boat had sunk James' ship, the SS Lusitania. All aboard perished, including James Jr. Receiving that fateful telegram from the Army, James' mother Laura was grief-stricken. She joined her family in the garden to inform them of the horrible, most unwanted news. The family was shaken to its very core, and they did their level best to console one another. The Dunsmuirs never really recovered after the death of their son.
Now, Dola, who was the youngest daughter of James and Laura, was particularly upset by the death of her brother, and the only way she found to calm her nerves was by taking long walks in the Japanese garden.
It was in the beautiful Japanese garden, where Dola had last seen her brother, that she had the first recorded experience with the spirits of Hatley Castle. From across the pond, Dola saw a man standing in a military uniform. Looking closer, she saw it was her brother James. Dola quickly ran to him. She missed her brother terribly and wanted to tell him how much she loved him. When she arrived at the spot where she saw the uniformed man, of course, no one was there. If her eyes were not playing tricks on her, then perhaps her grief had become unbearable, causing hallucinations. Disappointed and saddened, she returned to the gazebo. And then, from behind her, Dola heard her name being called out. She looked back and saw her brother, and somehow she knew her brother understood exactly how she felt. It was as though James had come to say his final goodbye to his sister, and then vanished. Visitors to Victoria's Hatley Castle in British Columbia, now Royal Roads University, may still encounter the Dunsmuir family, who seem bound for all eternity to this incredible castle. The beautiful and elegant Dean House restaurant is a popular dining spot in Calgary, Alberta. But this lovely building was also the scene of a tragedy, one which has given it the reputation as Alberta's most haunted building. One night, a staff member was alone in the building, yet she clearly heard footsteps coming from the attic. The footsteps ended, replaced by the soft notes of a piano. Nervously, she made her way up the stairs to investigate. She entered the upstairs parlor, but the room was empty. Relieved, she made her way to the piano and casually hit one of the keys. The moment she did, the room began to come alive. A rocking chair began to slowly move on its own. She reached out to steady the chair, but the rocking stopped before she could touch it. Then she saw a crimson stain on the floor. She reached down to touch the puddle when it vanished. A low, whispering sound began to emanate from a mirror in the corner. Cautiously, she made her way towards it. Behind her was a woman with wild, angry eyes. She turned to protect herself, but the room was empty. Then, some invisible force began to move the rocking chair again, and she fled, knowing she had encountered the spirits of the Dean house.
Calgary, Alberta's Dean House restaurant is located in Fort Calgary, where the city's history is celebrated. But the Dean House itself has a very different past, one which may be better left forgotten. When night falls, its dark past sometimes comes to life.
The Dean House was built by the last serving superintendent of the Calgary Barracks, Captain Richard Burton Dean, and he moved into the house in 1906 and lived in the house until 1914. The house is currently operated by the Fort Calgary Preservation Society as a restaurant. There are stories about hearing footsteps. The first week I worked at Fort Calgary, one of the windows on the third floor mysteriously blew out.
Philip Dawson, former manager of the restaurant, had many paranormal encounters. He was closing up after a private function when he heard footsteps coming from the stairs. A gaunt-faced man began to descend, and as he approached, the temperature of the room dropped. The man completely ignored Philip, passing him and walking out onto the enclosed patio. Stunned for a moment, Philip followed the man. But there was no sign of him on the enclosed patio. Yet there was no other exit. It was as if the gaunt-faced man had vanished. This would not be the last time the spirits of the Dean house paid Philip a call. On another occasion, he distinctly heard a phone ringing in the building's parlor. The only phone in that room is an antique, yet it was ringing, in spite of not being connected to the wall. Then the gaunt-faced man appeared again, standing in the doorway, staring at Philip, who was frozen in fear. The figure walked away, and the phone began to ring again, a call Philip chose not to accept.
There was a double murder-suicide in the house. So there are many people that feel that the ghosts in the house perhaps were those two people.
During the lean years of the Great Depression, the building became a boarding house. A young couple and their child lived in what is now the attic. Times were hard, and the struggle to get by created tension, magnified by the husband's psychological problems and abusive nature. The husband's behavior became more and more erratic until finally, one night, his inner demons took control. Holding a butcher's knife, he made his way into their bedroom. He slashed his wife repeatedly and left her mutilated body on the bed. Consumed with guilt, he used the same knife to slash his own wrists. In the morning, it was their child who came upon the gruesome aftermath. She survived the experience physically, but psychologically, it destroyed her. The brutal acts committed here may have left a permanent imprint on the house. The spirits of the family may be trapped within its walls forever, each in their own personal hell. There are reports of a ghost child, an innocent and tragic figure seen hiding in and around the attic. Perhaps this is the daughter, trapped here with her parents. Philip Dawson had another strange experience. He heard noises coming from the attic and went upstairs to investigate. Upon entering the attic, he saw a child, dressed in clothing from a bygone era. She saw him and did not take kindly to his presence. She raced at him, only to disappear mere inches away. To this day, Philip refuses to enter the attic of the Dean house. The ghosts of the Dean house represent a tortured family portrait. The spirit of the woman in the mirror, condemned to relive her brutal death. Her child, even though she lived on for many years after the murder, the happy little girl she once was, died that fateful morning and has returned to the building. And finally, the killer himself, trapped for eternity at the scene of his own crime. Just one of the lost souls inhabiting the Dean house. Calgary's Hose and Hound pub is now a popular night spot, but the building was originally a fire station built almost a century ago. It has also been the scene of many unexplained events. Paranormal expert Gretchen Michaels made arrangements to spend the night in the building to investigate these reports firsthand. Suddenly, an antique fire axe fell from the wall, missing her by mere inches. Frightened, Gretchen began to regret being in the building alone. Perhaps she was not. She entered the darkened kitchen, using her camera's night vision feature to see. Something small was moving around on the shelves, perhaps an animal. Then, some unseen force pelted her with objects from the kitchen shelves, unleashing a barrage of baskets and utensils. Fearing for her safety, she fled the building. The next day, Gretchen visited Chuck Rose, owner of the pub, to show him a remarkable piece of videotape. What the tape had captured for a brief second was not a ghost per se, or what people perceive a ghost to be. The tape showed something very different. It appeared to be a monkey?
Anyone who has ever loved a pet will claim that they have as much personality as human beings. But can an animal become so attached to a place that it stays on in spirit after it dies? In Calgary, Alberta's Hose and Hound pub, there are people who will tell you it is more than just possible.
The ghostly presence at the Hose and Hound pub does not set out to terrify people, but almost torment them with an endless series of malicious pranks, often at the expense of the staff. Trays of food are a favorite target. And staff report hearing a strange sound after one of these incidents, as if someone or something was laughing at them.
Well, the most common ghost legend we have is about Barney the monkey. The very first fire chief of Calgary was a guy named Cappy Smart, and he had a thing about animals. He had several monkeys here through the years. Barney the monkey was a mascot for the firemen here at Fire Hall number 3. One day they were out fighting a fire and they left Barney tied up to the flagpole out front. Some people came along, a family, and one of the children tried to offer the monkey a treat. The monkey attacked him and scratched him up quite badly. And as a result, the firemen decided they had to put the monkey down. His remains were buried out in front of the fire hall. And ever since then, there's been some strange goings-on here. The dishwasher, when it's open, it's off. You close it, and it's on. Well, it was sitting there open, and we were standing right in front of it. And all of a sudden, it came on with the lid open. The next day, I talked to the people who supplied it for us, and they said, it can't do that. They said they checked it out, they sent a repairman. The repairman said, no, everything's working perfectly, and what you're describing can't happen. Well, it did happen.
The pranks played by the spirit known as Barney are not always so harmless. A waitress was cleaning the upper level prior to opening. She heard the sounds of something moving on the opposite side of the room. Suddenly, the balls on a pool table broke with a deafening crack. Yet there was no one else in the pub. Then pool balls began to fly across the room, thrown with tremendous force directly at her. Fearing for her safety, she raced from the room. Many think that this was one of Barney's more violent outbursts. The Hose and Hound is one of Calgary's most popular pubs, where even the staff come to relax and enjoy a quiet drink. But some think Barney may have an appetite for alcohol. Drinks have mysteriously disappeared from tables, right under the nose of patrons. Later, they have discovered their now empty glass, far from its original location. Some suspect that Barney may have had a hand in these beverage hijackings. Working animals often show a level of devotion equal to any human being. Perhaps Barney's dedication to the firehouse was so great in life that it has carried over beyond death. Whether he is feeling playful, malicious, or just thirsty, this former mascot continues his supernatural monkey shines at Calgary's Hose and Hound pub.